Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Chernobyl Episode 2. It's called Please Remain Calm. So, full spoilers for the episode, of course. We ended last episode with, the ominous cloud going towards the populated areas. Obviously, we spent a lot of the first episode dealing with the initial kind of like almost disaster crisis, but a lot of the frustration came from characters high up not willing to accept that anything bad had actually happened. And this episode, I thought one of the biggest cathartic moments for me in the whole thing is there's a moment where Stellan Skarsgård's character Boris, who we meet for the first time in this episode, who's not as bad as maybe some of the characters in the first episode, but he's still very resistant to listening to anything to begin with. There's a moment in this episode where he's just hit with this truth, and he's just silent after that for like several scenes. And it's like he's just sobered up and realised that he's completely screwed. And I found that immensely satisfying. I don't know about you, but I...
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that feeling. I didn't, I don't think it was as impactful to me as it was clearly to you, but I get the sentiment.
Here we go. Round two.
No, there's scenes I like. I just, there are some scenes I really like, actually.
Okay.
But... I don't know. I've still got this feel overall where I'm not quite as invested. I'm not really feeling the tension as much, weirdly, which is what everyone seems to be going on about a lot.
Oh, I'm feeling tension. The tension.
See, that's the thing. Everyone's talking about the tension, and I'm not feeling that.
The tension at the start of this episode is just someone ringing a phone and not getting an answer, and I was like, oh. It was working for me. I think it's really well done. It's really well directed. The tension is great. Now there was a lot of comments on the video last week on the YouTube about us saying Russian a lot when we're actually in Ukraine. That is a fair complaint to make. I am very guilty of maybe just interchangeably saying Russian instead of Soviets. Right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty guilty of that. I will admit to that. But I actually was curious. I looked up because I was curious because we're talking a lot about like speaking in Russian, right? Like, we would want them to be speaking Russian. It's kind of weird to speak in English and that. But I was curious. I was like, well, were people in Ukraine actually speaking Russian at the time? And I looked it up, just a quick search on Wiki, nothing advanced, but it mentioned that up until a couple of years after this, when Ukrainian was made the official language, that it was both languages. And I'm not sure what the percentage of each one was, or like, were they mostly speaking Russian because they were under Soviet control, so it was more enforced, or was it more actually Ukrainian, but there was some Russian because it was part of the Soviet Union? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard because usually if it's not the, so at this point I assume Russian was the official language. You're saying that Ukrainian became the official language.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because Russian was the official language or it was just kind of open-ended before that.
Right, okay.
It just hadn't been defined what the official language was.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I was curious. So,
they sound the same anyway to my ear.
To your ear, sure.
To be fair, a lot of Eastern European, the lot of the harsh sounds in the languages, the hard vowels, they often sound very similar to my ear. Where
of course, they sound similar.
It's similar.
It's like Scandinavian languages all sound kind of similar to my ear. Does it?
Yeah. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm saying to me they sound the same.
There was one scene we actually forgot to talk about last week that I actually really liked. It was just a little thing. It was like a real recording of like one of the dispatch calls.
Oh, because it was relatively early on, wasn't it?
Yeah. Because there was a similar thing in this episode. There was a real news broadcast at one point, just to kind of give it some texture and some like real kind of here's some real footage or audio from the time period. Which was even though obviously at no point we're forgetting this is a real thing that happened. It's a nice little. Just remember this is real. Like this was all going on, right?
Yeah.
So we actually follow Jared Harris's character, Legazov, for the episode, and he's paired up with Skarsgård's character Boris, and they're sent to Chernobyl, and he's not very happy with this. But I love the scene early on where they go. He's brought into headquarters, whatever, and he's given this report. Right, you're waiting to go in to meet everyone else in this committee. Right, here's the report, and he's looking through it, and he gets to like page 3, and he just starts freaking out Like the performance here is really good, and they get into the room, and everyone, including Gorbachev, the first like person I went, hey, that's Gorbachev, I know who that is. Like they're all like, everything seems to be under control. Yeah, I mean, they're doing this, they're doing that. Everything seems hunky dory. That's fine. But unless anyone else is getting to saying that, they're literally leaving the table. They're ready to move on.
Yeah, they are. And then he's like, actually.
Yeah, this thing here on page 3 about the fireman holding a piece of, smooth
mineral. Graphite.
No, I wasn't trying to say graphite. I was trying to say what he said. He said
mineral.
He said mineral. There you go. But like he's like, hey, that's part of the core. That means that it's exposed, and that it's pumping out radiation into the air. And he starts giving them these harsh things, and it gets kind of like heated. And he's eventually told to like, hey, like what's this reaction here? You're being loud and blah. Like, I will explain myself in a calm manner. And he reiterates what he's saying. And it's enough to get Gorbachev to sort of say, okay, you're going with him then. But you're both going and seeing it for yourselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's the nuclear, fission for dummies explanation on the helicopter. But as soon as he sees the smoke coming out of it, he's like, shit. He's like, he knows. He doesn't know everything, but he knows enough. He knows like this. Yeah, this is dire territory. And Boris, to his credit, he does actually kind of like. He almost has a minor face turn in front of the two douchebags from last episode. The guy who ran the plant.
Yeah.
Where he's like, because he says, why did I see graphite from the helicopter? And he's like,
it's probably just some concrete.
Yeah. And he's like, you just made a mistake, because I may not know much about nuclear reactors, but I know my concrete. Which actually ties into another character in the episode, actually, where they shows in a couple of ways that a lot of people who are in like official positions kind of rose up from being workmen. Like they didn't like go through government; they went through like their specific industry before they went to the Kremlin or whatever. So that was really interesting. And we get this general who like volunteers to drive a lead line truck in to get like a proper reading with a better meter. And he comes out and it's like it's because that was one of the things in the meeting is Harris is like, hey, like you're only getting a 3 point whatever because that's as far as their meters go. Yeah, that's the only reason why you have that.
This number, it's 400 or whatever. It's it's like the equivalent of it was 400 X-rays, the equivalent of, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, which sounds bad. But I realized that number is the highest that the standard meters go to, which means that's just what they're reporting, not what it actually is.
Yeah. So I mean, it has all that sort of stuff building up, and there's a couple of great scenes in this between the two of them. Because Legazov keeps telling him, hey, like you have to evacuate, and there's a great line of dialogue in here where he's like, hey, that's my decision to make. Well, then make the decision. I've been told not to.
that genuinely got a laugh out of me.
Yeah, that was a great line of dialogue. And it all boils over because there's a point where he gets a phone call. It's right after one of the most sort of like dramatic little scenes of the episode where he says, hey, like, he's like, hey, we have to evacuate. These people are out here breathing this in. And he's like, well, we're here. We're staying. He's like, yeah, and we'll be dead in 5 years. And that's the moment where he shuts up and it like hits him that like, yeah, just being here right now, like his life expectancy is just declining the longer he's here.
Yeah, pretty rapidly.
The phone rings and it sits there ringing for a while, and it lets it really linger in that awkward moment, that awkward silence. And he answers it, and we find out that other governments have become aware of this. People have seen things. There's been satellite photos that the US have done, and there's readings of radiation in other places in Europe. Right, they're getting readings, and that's kind of how the episode starts. Is that it's already reached Minsk, which is what brings in Ilana, who's another character in here, and I think the line that hit me here is that he says to Legazov in this scene that children in Germany are not allowed to be on the streets right now because they're worried about the amount of radiation that's hitting Germany. And they look out the window and there's school kids walking around like just a couple of 100 kilometers from the reactor. And it's just, this is kind of like, okay, we have to evacuate this.
It's like, yeah, this is pretty shit.
Yeah. So No, like that moment really hit. That moment was like, yeah, there's other countries like, hundreds and thousands of miles away, like making these choices, be taking more safety precautions than you're doing, and you're like right next to it. Like that really hit. That really hit.
Even the town that's like 3 kilometers away.
Yeah.
It's like, I can stay there for now.
Yeah, so that because I love that scene at the start actually, because it's just obviously she's a physicist and she's like, hey, like that alarm went off. It's coming from outside. It's actually because I love the opening scenes with her on the phone calls because she phones around like the closest nuclear like plants and things like that, and they all just kind of no, there's nothing wrong, like everything's fine, hunky dory, and she phones Chernobyl, which is it's like, hey, that's quite far away, that's kind of unfeasible, but she phones Chernobyl and there's no answer, understandably.
Yeah.
So. I really like that opening scene. This character, though, interesting because I did actually listen to the official podcast that they put out with the writer, and I'm glad I did because this was really interesting. This character, she didn't exist. She's kind of there to represent all the different scientific minds who were kind of in opposition to Legazov or were kind of like challenging him on what he was saying about certain things. Sure. But she is kind of notably the most. I guess like Hollywood character in the sense that she kind of like barters her way into Pripyat and gets into Legazov and like the way she gets in there feels kind of unfeasible and
it's something that you say she challenges Legazov. It's not that Legazov is wrong per se, he's just missed a few things.
It missed a few things. I mean, you can phrase it whatever you want, but the point is that he just thought he was doing the right thing, and then ultimately he's corrected. And that's kind of she's representing multiple people in that sense. I don't know if she necessarily represents everyone who challenged them, but she represents the other scientific minds because ultimately there'd be too many characters. So I'm glad I know that because I think she stuck out after that point of being a little bit weird in terms of feeling the least realistic. And amusingly, she is actually the one character who is just outright not real.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt that while watching it. I wasn't really feeling her character that much. This. I don't want to say it excuses it. It's a reason, but I still don't like it because I've still felt it when I'm watching it.
Yeah, I mean, our collision is not super big though. I don't think after the opening, like, because for me, like some of the bigger scenes in the episode, like the second time they brief everyone in the committee and Gorbachev's there. Yeah. So to me, this scene plays fantastically, and it plays fantastically because it's spelling out exactly what might happen if they don't do something.
Sure.
Where we realise the gravitas of where this is going. And how aware were you of how severe this would have been had they not like stopped the actual thermal explosion?
Vaguely.
Very vaguely. Yeah, it was vague for me. So when he starts describing this, and he starts describing like, okay, this radius is that's just decimated immediately. It'll be uninhabitable for this amount of time. Then this bigger radius will probably be uninhabitable for this amount of time. And then beyond that, we're going to see all these countries and cities all have increased cancer, birth defects. We're talking millions upon millions of people dying. And the other detail that came out of this for me, it may have been mentioned briefly in a scene before this, but either way, it shocked me when they said this, and this is completely true, is that the other 3 reactors were still operating this entire time.
Well, they're not that easy to just turn off.
Well, you say that. So one of them was still operating until the year 2000.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, how long uranium just sits there, right? It's not being manned; it just does it, right?
No, there was people in there operating.
People in there operating. Okay, you mean that? I thought you meant just they were leaving it to decay in there.
No, they were operating because some of the local cities relied on them for power, and they didn't want to ruin appearances and have everyone's power go out. I'm laughing here because of how insane this is. This is ridiculous. No, this is psychotic. You don't do this. The reasoning for doing this, but one of the things that sticks out to me about this show is every single time someone says, "No, we'll do this for the benefit of the state," as opposed to saving more people. It really struck me, and I think this scene where they explain what's going to happen, what the explosion is going to be, and the fact that there's 3 other cores that are sitting right next to it as well, right? All these things, because they're explaining that, Legazov thought the water was drained from underneath, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the first episode, didn't he demand that the water pumps be turned on?
I don't recall that moment, but you could be right.
I think that was something he was saying a lot last episode. And if he actually is responsible for those tanks being full, not only was he negligent to the nth degree during that night, he was also actually, not necessarily intentionally, but he's also responsible for almost causing the explosion itself.
To be fair, given what they say in this episode, I don't think it would have mattered. They talk about how it all all the pipes run through there anyway. Everything from the fire engines that they're pouring all the water in would end up in those tanks anyway.
Sure, yeah. It doesn't mention that.
It wouldn't really have mattered, whatever he said last episode.
I was thinking how much I hated him last episode. I'm like, is this like an extra layer?
You want an extra reason to hate him, and I get that.
Is this an extra reason to hate this guy?
I don't think it would have actually made a difference in this case, based on what they were saying in this episode.
Okay, but still not the right choice.
Oh no, of course not.
Yeah, but they basically say, okay, we're going to have to send 3 people in who know the layout to like drain the water, so we've got a chance. Because Jared Harris' character, Legasov, he thought that they had like 2-3 weeks because because all the layers underneath the reactor are designed to like slow down a meltdown, so they've got time to try and do something.
And he wasn't wrong in that sense.
No, he wasn't wrong in that sense, but because he believed the water tanks were empty, but because they're not empty, they've got like 2-3 days tops before this explosion happens. So they kind of have to get these volunteers who work at the plant. But the moment in the scene, though, in the committee, is that he stands up and says, we're asking permission to kill 3 men. That is essentially what it is.
Yeah. Probably one of the only moments in the episode that struck me as particularly weird, because given just, he's just spoke about how severe this was. He's just pitched to them like, okay, this is how terrible this is. Like, yeah, send 3 people in. What are you waiting for?
I think this is more to do with their system and how they have to get permission to do anything. I don't think this is. Oh, I know logically you're saying, yeah, of course, like 3 men is worth the lives of like millions. Like, I don't think that's the
right, and that's the whole communist thing anyway, right? Okay, no. It's kind of the greater good.
Sure.
So it's It seems weird to me that that wasn't the accepted solution anyway.
Well, it is the accepted solution. I mean,
because
Gorbachev's response is basically, well, of course. Like, if anything, Legasov, he's the one who's kind of being out in the sense that are different in that he's doubting that he's allowed to do that. Everyone else is basically, of course you're going to do this. Yes, go do it.
No, exactly, and that's my point. That's why it feels weird from Legasov, him being the one going, "This is how terrible this is going to be. I'm just convincing you this is, the end of the world as we know it," sort of thing. And it's like, but 3 people, and he seems like he's doubting whether or not there should be. Almost is the way it comes across.
I ain't get doubt from him. I disagree with that. I ain't get doubt at all.
No, fair enough.
I get doubt.
It's the way it came across to me.
To me, it just felt like he understood the weight of what he was saying. Like, he understood the weight of, like, we're sending 3 people to die. They're going to be dead within a week. Like, that to me, that's what that scene said to me. The final scene is phenomenal, because it's just the 3 men going down into the water, and their flashlights turn off, and we actually end the scene in darkness. And we're in darkness for a while before the credits start rolling, and it's just the sound of the counters and the meters kind of ticking away. It's kind of horrific. It's very if you're claustrophobic or scared of the dark, I feel like this ending's probably enough to send a shiver down your spine. It's pretty terrifying, just on a conceptual level, thinking about this really happening. Like, I'm gonna get in there and like, and not only are you in the dark and radiated water, you also have the fate of millions on you, and you know you're dead anyway. Like,
well, do they tell them that they're dead anyway? I don't remember.
Yeah, because they basically say when they're asking for volunteers, it's like because they're refusing to tell them that it's this guaranteed death, and the guys are basically like, hey, like I know someone who was a bodyguard that night that exploded, and they're already dying, like they're dead, and you're telling us we're going into water underneath the reactor. Like, they know, this is basically the argument in the scene, where Skarsgård stands up and is like, no, hey, duty, country, and convinces them to get on board with it. And it inspires 3 people. I think another scene we need to talk about that was really good was so the plan before they get to the realization of what they're doing to kind of limit the smoke and the radiation leakage which is sand and I think it was Baron get into the reactor via helicopter, which they can't go right over. They have to kind of just hope the wind blows it in from the side.
Yeah.
Like there's a scene where we actually get the helicopters doing that, and we have one helicopter who flies into the smoke, and goes down, and
it kind of just breaks apart.
Yeah, I think the accurate is it the thing that actually makes it kind of fall, or the thing that like sort of triggers the reaction to just start crumbling is that like it has a cable or something like that. Like if you're paying close attention to it, it hits a cable.
Right. Okay.
I mean that's not. I mean that would cause problems anyway. But I assume the pilot wasn't.
Because the way it looked when I was watching, obviously I didn't see this cable. The way it looked is like one of the propeller blades kind of came off. So I thought, oh, maybe it had like melted in the heat.
I think that was hitting the wire.
Fair enough. I obviously didn't see the wire clearly.
No, it just falls. I love that you don't see it. I love that it goes behind the building. It just kind of,
yeah,
you know, or it goes just out of shot. Like, you don't necessarily see like an explosion. You know Hollywood when the thing hits the ground. It's not like that.
No.
And then it's like, yeah, the other ones still have to keep doing what they're doing. They can't just back out. We have to do this. So it's this constant horror. It's a horror story, and we said that last episode. And I feel like this episode is still a horror story, but it's a horror story in a bigger magnitude. And there's scenes at the start where they finally get the firemen back to the hospital, and they're like, the doctor realizes that it is radiation, and like they have to dump all the firemen's clothes in the basement. Like it's just full of horrific moments, and I think there's a lot of really great there's a great scene with Jared Harris where he's told to go to a hotel after he's there quite early on. He's just arrived. He's had the one kind of like confrontation, and he's in this hotel, and he specifies a different glass that's been upside down and has just been washed. He doesn't want one that's been sitting there.
Yeah.
And he drinks out this glass, and this couple is like, "Oh, you just got here. You hear about the reactor, the plant?" And he's like, "Yep. Is there anything to worry about?" But he's been ordered. Obviously, he knows he's not supposed to say anything, so he just kind of smiles and, "No, nothing to worry about." And
has another drink.
I think you can see his soul kind of like dying a little bit as he says it. It's kind of heartbreaking. The performances are really good in this episode. I think Harris and Skarsgård are both exceptional in this.
Very good.
Yeah. What did you think of the music? You're the music guy. I like the music in this.
Yeah, I like it. It's subdued, but it's working. It's doing exactly what it needs to be doing. It's not flashy, but that's not a critique.
I think that goes again with it feeling kind of grounded and more horrific than, I think if you put in your, like, because that says the three heroic men are going in at the end, like you had some brass, like the heroic sacrifice.
Feel a bit cheap, wouldn't it?
It'd feel cheap, yeah. It kind of just lets it speak for itself in a lot of ways. And that's pretty smart.
It's not very particularly memorable music, right?
Sure.
It's not things you'll necessarily remember in a week's time. Like you'll be like, oh yeah, that's the music. Before you, I mean, it might play again in the next episode and it'll trigger for you, but beforehand you probably wouldn't be able to hum any of it back or tell me what much of it was.
Well, what did you like about the episode then? Since you said you liked some stuff.
The scenes I most like were the conference scenes and a couple of scenes between the two guys. The helicopter. That bit. Honestly, I like a lot of the conversational stuff. All of the tense moments are just not landing for me at all. Like, that bit at the end, when you're going into the water, I didn't care. I wasn't feeling it at all.
You're in such a minority with this. Every single person.
I know I am.
Every single person that I see talking about this show, that is the first thing they talk about is how tense it is.
Everyone's talking about the tension, and I don't get it. And which is why I assume I'm not enjoying this as much as everyone else. Like, because I like a lot of the core writing. I think all the conversations. Like I say, the stuff in the boardroom was probably my favorite stuff. But the tense parts, they're just not doing anything for me. I'm not feeling any tension.
Are you out then? Am I doing this myself next week?
Maybe. We'll see. I'm not sure. See how I feel next week.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like you're not very enthusiastic about talking about the scenes, really. I mean,
yeah, it's just.
So
No, I'm really enjoying the conversational bits. You know, like the stuff we talked about with the helicopter. You know, that was the one like actiony bit, I guess, that I was as into. You know, in terms of the just watching what happened with the helicopter. But you know, all the stuff with you know, Boris and what's his name is all that stuff's pretty good. I like the stuff with them on the helicopter. You know, when they've got a, you know, where you know Boris like, hey, go fly over it. And he's like, yeah, maybe don't do that. That will be dead within like a week.
yeah, he has to talk the pilot out of it. He's like, "Hey, if you do that, you're going to be praying for the gunshot." Like, because Boris like
He's like,
threatens him. He's like, "Hey, if you
yeah,
don't
it's like if you don't fly over there, I'll just shoot you. And he's
yeah,
like, take the gunshot, you'll be better.
yeah, the gunshot's the better option." No, I think it's exceptionally well directed. I think there's this eerie feeling to the whole thing, and there's this kind of eerie, bittersweet sadness to everything, and you kind of feel like so many people who are just screwed because they're in the vicinity. The like seeing how far it reaches, seeing because I think when they're in that committee room and they sit down and they explain the explosion that's going to happen if they don't do anything, there's a moment there where everyone in that room starts taking this more seriously. That they weren't before. Before this was just some problem that experts can go and deal with. They're not thinking about it. That moment, from that moment there, they're thinking about this. For probably years, but certainly they're thinking about nothing but this probably for the next several weeks of their lives.
You would hope so,
because it just hit them what's at stake with this.
Yeah.
And so much of it to them as well as the idea of like not disgracing the public world image of the Soviet regime, like not like disgracing themselves and disgracing
there's
the
a whole
regime.
bit where it's like, no, our power is through the perception of power rather than actually having the power itself. And you know, us doing nothing and this just happening, you know, is bad. But us, if we start panicking and flailing about, that looks equally as bad. There's a balancing act they've got to find as far as they're concerned, rather than just solving the problem.
Yeah. So no, that's episode 2 of Chernobyl. There'll definitely be a review next week. Certainly for myself. Possibly with Connor, possibly without. We'll see.
I mean, it says a lot that I definitely never cared enough to listen to the other companion podcast.
Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show on the channel, you can over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv. We can support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses and extras and that kind of thing. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?